A 29-year-old brilliant technologist reached out to me and she said, I have 4 weeks to learn how to be a manager. She said, I got a big job and I don't want to mess it up. Tell me what book I should read. I started sending her things like, this is how you run your first one-on-one. This is how you run your second one-on-one. They're a little bit different. And the difference is what's going to help you start to see who on your team can predict their work outcomes.
Welcome to AI to Z. Hosted by Airswift's Chief Revenue Officer, Anna Frazzetto, we delve into artificial intelligence, health tech, and more. Tune in and journey with us into the future.
Well, welcome everyone. And today I have the honor and privilege of being able to introduce Christine Sandman Stone on the show. My first interaction with Christine was a while ago where you had written a book, your first book, about great hacks in raising a family. And it stuck in my head, especially if you have two parents that are working in senior roles. It's kind of difficult to kind of manage that whole child thing and drop-offs. And my favorite story was you talking about putting your kids to bed in the outfit that they're going to wear the next day. So it would make life so much easier the next day. And I'm like, that is so brilliant. And why hasn't anybody else thought about this or shared this wonderful nugget before? But I love you describe yourself as being pragmatic, successful, effective leader. You also talk about modern talent development and retention. I do want to talk about your new book where you talk about modern management because it's so different than, 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Yes, it's interesting. When I first started talking about putting my kids to bed in their school clothes, I kind of did it like in a shameful way. Like, please don't tell my mom. Like, I know this isn't what you're supposed to do, but it saved me 20 minutes every morning. And it's interesting because it's gone a bit viral. I can't tell you how many young parents now that I talk to who say, yep, I do the same thing and it's completely changed our household. And that's really those are my favorite leaders, the ones who find the efficient, fast ways to success and they share them. So I'm really equally delighted to be here with you, Anna, and equally delighted to be sharing things that will help people accelerate success.
Excellent. So let's dig into your latest book, right? So maybe you can kind of start a little bit with the backstory. And I apologize because I have the book sitting on my desk at home, but I'm in my Houston office today, so I don't have the book with me. But let's talk about what inspired you to write The Modern Management Mentor.
Sure. A 29-year-old brilliant technologist reached out to me and she said, I have 4 weeks to learn how to be a manager. And she'd always been like the top in her group as she was an individual contributor. She said, I got a big job and I don't want to mess it up. Tell me what book I should read. I was like, darn it, I've read like 200 business books, but they'd all kind of fall into categories like Brene Brown, Dare to Lead, totally inspirational, right? And then you Kuzis and Posner and First Break All the Rules, very theoretical. And there are two things that a 29-year-old technologist does not need when they're managing a team, and that is inspiration and theory, right? They just need the practical things. So she asked me to coach her. I started sending her things like 8 questions to ask your boss before you even start that'll give you the lay of the land. Or this is how you run your first one-on-one. This is how you run your second one-on-one. They're a little bit different. And the difference is what's going to help you start to see who on your team can predict their work outcomes. So we started going back and forth and sharing information, and it became a book. As it was written, I realized, okay, she's one manager in the US. So I took the book and sent it to 2 managers in India, 2 managers in London, and another in the US. They used it for 6 months and came back with suggestions and refinements. So I knew it didn't have a global bias. I knew it was comfortable for hybrid or completely remote teams. And it's been such a remarkable journey. It's going to be a year old in about a month. And the fascinating thing was I thought the audience would be new young managers. And it's finding a really strong foothold in leaders of managers who are looking for ways to bring, like, to renew accountability or to kind of refresh their teams. The pandemic really had us managing in a completely different way. And now everyone's back and we need to figure out how to drive results. And so it's been a remarkable 11 months. And I am grateful to my collaborator for her questions.
So, Christine, you talk about how it's effective in leadership. I read the book, and I think what's brilliant about the book is the fact that I think it's a great refresher. What winds up happening sometimes is when you're a leader in a leadership role for a while, you kind of have a tendency sometimes, and, forgive me for saying this, but you go into autopilot sometimes, right? Like you just kind of like, you're just like, oh yeah, I got to do one of those. Yeah, I'll do that. And I think what the book does is it's a little bit of, no, snap out of it. Like it's different. People are different, and you need to kind of tailor your style depending on the different teams and the different types of groups that you're managing. And you need to constantly raise that awareness.
I agree. And for so long, I don't think Management 101 has changed in 40 years, right? I think it's still being taught the same way, but the world is completely different. We don't do 5-year strategies anymore. Like, everybody's looking for quarterly indicators of growth and organizational health and things like that. We don't have everybody crowded into a single office anymore. We have these global teams that are really powerful and deeply talented and hybrid and functionally working, following the sun around the globe. These are all different things, and management didn't change a lot. And it's critical that we have tools that help a manager. Like, one of the tools in the book is called Goldilocks, and it's basically a way to figure out workload across a team in 15 minutes or less. Like, you just walk through and ask everybody, or ask the managers, okay, on your team, too busy, too late, just right. Just walk down the people. Don't need to know what they're doing. And then you look at the outliers. Who's too busy? Who's too late? What can we do to rebalance? And it's just such a rapid way to triage. And that used to be less necessary when we were all in the office and we could see things all the time. And it is such a lightweight way to solve workload. So the book, you talked about it, and I know it's on your desk. The interior designer, I love her. She's a graphic designer. And so she used color. And if it's blue, it's a tool. And if it's white, it's supporting text. So as you work through it, you can say, oh my God, the holiday party is going up. Do I do that any differently if I'm a manager? You just go right to it. I need to give someone feedback. It's going to be pretty negative. And you go right to it. So it's pragmatic and simple and effective. And I'm proud of it.
That's it. So what key message do you hope that the readers take away from your book? Like, if you wanted to just, kind of tell everyone, this is what you're going to get out of it.
Managers are not born, they are built. And most managers spend their first year making mistakes. And I agree with you that seasoned managers get a little bit in a pattern. And these tactics are great ways to be effective quickly without a lot of effort.
Right. And what I love about the book, it's almost, I don't want to call it a workbook, but it's kind of has the feel, it gives you that ability to kind of, oh my goodness, this is, let me work through this issue. Yeah,
absolutely.
Which is great news. So now, how do you see AI transforming modern management practices?
Well, if you think about it, 30 years ago, when I was leading my first team, one of the things that I had to do as a manager was I had to spell check their work, right? I had to proof it because mistakes could be really costly to us if they got in front of someone more senior. Now, as a manager, I would never spell check something, right? It's already automated. The AI technology behind spell checking grammar is so sophisticated. It's reliable. But Gen AI is a new game. So instead of just using AI, like we've been using it for decades to do research, to do simple things, it's now generating content for the first time. So it's generating visuals, it's generating writing, it's generating decks. And while that's all terrific, those are things that a lot of entry-level people do. It's even generating code. So now instead of, it's almost like We used to teach spelling, we check spelling, and now we don't need to. Now all of a sudden, the new thing we have to check is quality and accuracy. And we have to teach our people, yes, you got this beautiful thing generated, but it's actually factually incorrect, or it references a source that doesn't exist, or the context of this recommendation in the document actually does not work given the industry that this is for. And so we have to, as managers, realize that these things are coming in, and we have to teach our folks new skills in order to use them successfully.
Right, which kind of leads me to ask, like, what are some of the implications of AI for a modern manager?
Oh, Jesus. I think the biggest, hardest one is talent. I think AI is doing a lousy job in finding talent. If you think about it, models are built to replicate success, right? Or to apply logic. If I've got a team and they're doing fine, but I need them to do better, I actually do not need a candidate who fits in the model of my existing team. I need someone smarter, faster, more innovative, better. And so if my model is using the job description that populated this team before, I'm just going to get more of that. One of my favorite stories, there's a young software developer that I coach. She's based out of Boston. Brilliant. She gets promoted like every 18 months. She had gone to her boss to talk about how she really felt that there was a place in the team for a role that was doing more of a full stack development, but also working with their data sets. And as she talked to him, he said, "This is brilliant. We should do this. It's going to be a band higher than where you are now. You're the person for it. It's done. Let's go for it." He said, "I got approval." And then he came back to her and he's like, "Oh, shoot, we just need like a job description to go into the HR system so that we can, quote, like interview you. But what we'll do is like, we'll put the job description in, you'll apply, it'll go through the system, and then the system will automatically move you into the proper salary band." He said, "I'm so busy. Could you just write this up for me?" She said, fine. She wrote up the job description, submitted it, and he said, "Oh gosh, I need you to just apply for me because we want to get this straightened out on Monday." So she applied on Friday. Friday night at 5:30, she gets an email telling her that they appreciate her interest, but she will not be considered for the position. And she called me in tears. And she said, "Did they change their minds? Like, did somebody higher up in the organization decide that I'm not really the right person for it? Are they going in a different direction?" Like, no, that's screened out by some model. Some model was looking for like a computer science degree, and they didn't realize that a cognitive science degree is a computer science degree, and it just like bumped you out. I said, "This is a model screen. There was no human involved. You just need to let your boss know everything is going to be fine." So she messaged her boss and said, "Hey, something weird happened." And he laughed his head off. He's like, "Oh my God, I'll fix that for you." They fixed it. She had the job on Monday. So here you have a situation where a brilliant person wrote a job description that was already shaped for her, and the system bumped her out. So the models aren't that great. And anybody who's hiring right now could probably tell you, like, boy, I get a lot of candidates, but I'm not sure that I'm getting anybody who really fires me up. That's where I think AI is probably creating the biggest challenge for managers now. And I'm curious if you see that in your business, Anna.
Yes. And, especially Airswift being in the workforce management business, we see this all the time. But that's why it's the power of the human touch, right? It's one of these things that I stress on the podcast and whoever that I talk to, that AI is a tool. And keep in mind, who's building the model is a human being, right? Who's building the model, that it needs to get tweaked so that it works in the way that you want it to work. But you need that human touch. You need the recruitment power. And look, instead of getting 1,000 resumes, you want to screen it down to, the top 50 that you want to go over. Yeah, the model can help you, but you have to be aware of whoever built the model, that it's not screening out versus screening in top talent, like your example. So it's definitely a problem. And there needs to be more checks and balances. I think a lot of times these models, the way they're written, not to go down a rabbit hole here, but there's not enough checks and balances. Like, for example, you mentioned computer science versus cognitive science and not understanding that. But there should have been like 7 other criteria checkpoints that would have countered that. If that got through, that would have still made her, kind of pass into it. But definitely a work in progress. I think it highlights the fact of, the importance that it's a tool and it still needs to be, fine tuned in some shape or form. So let's talk about, the importance of sponsors, right? Why are sponsors important for the development of managers? You've done a great job being a mentor, sponsor your whole life, but share a bit about the importance and maybe the difference.
Oh, absolutely. I heard Carla Harris is this brilliant speaker, and she gave a definition of mentor and sponsor that I've never forgotten. She said that you tell your mentors who you go to with a problem, and you tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly. And your sponsor is a person who's going to improve your financial future. And you tell them the good, and the good. Like, they literally can never hear that you doubt yourself, that you're struggling, because they're going to go carry your flag in a talent roundtable or recommend you for a role. And they just need to have confidence in your ability to deliver. So sponsors for mentors, if we talk about like the financial progression, sponsors for managers, if we talk about the financial progression of a manager, a sponsor's most important job is to be able to tell stories on behalf of the manager that indicate the manager's readiness for leadership and bigger teams and bigger projects. So it's critical as managers are interacting with people who will be their sponsors and advocates inside of their organizations, that they share stories about their success, especially stories where they've gone a little bit above and beyond maybe what the role is, stories of the results and outcomes of their teams, so that those can be repeated. Like in talent roundtables, right? They're making decisions about us, but we're not in the room when it's happening. So someone has to be in the room who's capable of telling our stories and being our advocate.
Right. So now, how does a person find a mentor and a sponsor?
So I think everyone needs mentors, multiples. They are problem solvers. So you should be finding mentors to solve specific problems. If I come to you, Anna, and I say, Anna, will you be my mentor? The chance that you will have a physical, like pull away from me or a pause is very high, because you don't know what I need. You don't know if you're the right match. You don't know how much time this means. But if I come to you and I say, hey, Anna, would you be willing to go for coffee with me and go over my strategy to build out my team over the next few years? I've got a new challenge coming in. I'd just love to run this by you. You'll say yes in a heartbeat. I've expressed a problem. I've expressed what I need you to do, and I've indicated that it's a one connection. But if you and I hit it off and you really enjoy working with me, you'll invite me back to discuss more things, and this mentorship will grow. But also, you might help me solve this problem, and I might move on to someone new who could help me design an API, or who could help me solve a data problem that I'm having. The more people that I go to with specific problems, and I say, this is what I'm thinking, can I get your counsel? The wider I start to build my network of influence. If I've got a problem like one of my peers is driving me bananas, I should not take that to someone inside of my company. That mentor needs to be outside my company. I tell that person the good, the bad, the ugly. I might cry. I might swear. I might sort myself out and then come back stronger with ideas. So I think there are 2 kinds of mentors inside the company for subject matter expertise. We go to them for problems. And then mentors who are outside of the company, that we take kind of the ugly, tough stuff, and then we discuss it with them without risk of it harming whether we'll be promoted or given more responsibility.
Right. Well, and it kind of leads me to, maybe you can share a little bit personal experience where a mentor has significantly impacted your career.
I have a great one. I had been at one company where I was measured against my peers. And so I did everything I could for my team to be in the top place. And we were both in the top place in our division, but we were also in the top place nationally. And I was great at leading this team. And I got hired for a title progression into a company. And I did what I was good at. I strengthened my team, I solved problems, and we were just like hitting every number. And I was so proud of myself. And my mentor came to me and said, "You're not going to last here." And I said, "Why?" I said, "I am just hitting everything." And my mentor said, "I know, I can tell, but you're at the point in your career now where the relationship that matters the most is actually your relationship with your peers, because like you're running a software development team, and for your app to get out, the QA team has to be ready to test, and the deployment team has to make room for you to go out in the next deployment." And my mentor said, right now, your peers don't like you at all. They see you as kind of self-focused and not really a team player. And you're not going to last here because of that. And I said, "I'll change. Like, what do you think I should do?" And my mentor said, like, "I'd go apologize, but that's just what I would do." And so, man, did I humble myself. I went back to every single one of my peers. I said, "I messed up, came from a highly competitive environment. I brought that understanding with me. I need to reset. I will reset. What can I do to help you?" And some of my peers were so glad that I talked to them. All of them, I started meeting with them weekly. Some of them were very gracious about it. A couple were took advantage and gave me a very long list of things that I could do to help them. And I just like sucked it up and did it. I humbled myself and I worked hard at it. And not only did I end up with a professional functional relationship, deep friendship. And we got so much done as part of that leadership team. So that was a moment where my mentor really like hit me with it right between the eyes. It was tough, gave me an idea of what to implement, and then supported me when I did it.
That's fantastic, Christine. I think that's so helpful. And you know what? And what's interesting is that I bet every single person that listens to this podcast and more have experienced exactly the same thing, where, you think you're hitting it out of the park, and then you don't realize the ripple effect, because maybe how you're impacting those around you. So that mentor was such a great mentor. I would then ask, what qualities should one look for in a mentor?
If you think about a mentor not as this brilliant wizard behind the curtain who has the answers to everything, but instead you think of a mentor as a person uniquely positioned to solve a problem, that's the way to find someone. If you're having a problem with the technical design, look for someone that you trust as a technical designer. If you're having a problem with how you like someone's performance on your team, look for someone who's a great performance solver. It's rare that you find all of these capabilities in a single person, and each of us to really be strong needs a portfolio or a team of subject matter experts. So I think the answer is find someone uniquely excellent to help you solve your problem.
Right. And actually, we have a couple of people in the industry that we know. Lauren Jones, for example, talks about, and also Leslie Vickery talks about, like, you need an advisory board, right? Like, you need a team of mentors. They're your advisory board that are going to help you in different facets and different problem areas that you might want to explore more. Okay, let's shift the conversation a little bit and talk about metrics, right? So why do you believe metrics are crucial for effective management? You talked about KPIs, and you were talking about quarterly reviews. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that, the importance of metrics.
Sure. Lazy managers who used to be co-located in a single building didn't have to be clear about their expectations or have clear expectations from leadership about what their team was doing, right? Because we fixed a lot of things without really realizing that we were fixing those errors. Now that we're distributed, now that our companies are moving so fast, a clear target is not optional. It's absolutely necessary. And it's necessary so that we identify what the top goal is that our team needs to achieve and how we're going to measure it. And then not only does that give us all a shared baseline of what success looks like, it enables every other single person on the team to make decisions as a new request comes in. They're like, wait a minute, I don't see how this is going to improve the conversion rate on the app. Hold on, let's put that, like, I'm not going to just pull that into my work right now. I'm going to set that aside until I can validate how that's actually going to help us hit the goal. So you accelerate and improve decision making on a team, and you also improve the objective mechanism to measure success or failure, and then your ability to adjust.
Exactly. Coming from a sales background, metrics is what we live and breathe by. So I can completely relate to that. Let's talk a little bit about data-driven approach, right? How does that enhance management practices?
I believe that when you're data-driven, you now have what you need to prioritize. And we all have more work than we have time. But when data is being used consistently, it's such a successful mechanism to prioritize what should be done, and honestly, to identify non-essential work that should be stopped or set aside. I'm a huge fan.
Right. And you know what's interesting about that is sometimes I think companies can get overwhelmed with the amount of data that they have access to. And it's, how do you advise managers to pick like the most relevant metrics? I've sat with plenty of clients where we're trying to come up with SLAs, which is metric driven, and they come up with a list of, like 15 SLAs. And I'm like, you realize more SLAs is not better. Some of them actually work against each other. So what advice would you give?
Few is the number one. In fact, if you can have one, that's better, but few. And in the process of coming up with 1 to 3, you really have to start to shed the ones that aren't as good as the others. So in a perfect world, one that has data that's readily available, that we don't have to kill ourselves to go through manual hijinks in order to get it, that it's available monthly, and that measurement is something that we can complete actions and see whether they make a difference in a 90-day period. I don't like lagging indicators that are too far out. I like early indicators and few.
That's great advice. Now, how do you balance that with human judgment and intuition, right? Like I've had this happen to me where a team comes like, we're A+ on all, metrics, but then you look at the team and you go, this isn't the productivity that I was really looking for.
There's a great book called Blink, and it talks about how some of the best experts in the world, like art evaluators, can recognize a fake in a second, but can't really explain why, but they're usually correct. And the heart of the book is that your ability to use intuition successfully usually comes after years of work and experience. And so it's less of an emotional reaction, and it's more of your brain synthesizing things quickly and coming to a good decision. So I personally use intuition around talent decisions, like where do I see potential? And I use it to assess risk. If metrics are coming back that a team is doing great, but I know that they aren't, then I know my metrics are broken and I need to change them. And here's the truth. We should be changing metrics. Like if the goal for a team was to stabilize defects because they have such a high defect rate, and once they get that solved, my goal shouldn't continue to be to focus on defects. I should say, great, now that we've got that solved, how do we grow? Or there's a new area of focus from the business, like we're shifting from top line growth to profitability. I need to stop, go back and check all the metrics and make sure that those are feeding profitability versus top line growth, two completely different things. And if I can be disciplined about making certain that my measurements are matching, part of the process of measuring every quarter isn't just saying, did we hit the number? It's, are the numbers still the right numbers that we should be aiming for? And good leaders change those.
Exactly. And I love it. Our CEO at Airswift talks about her spidey sense, right? So, and that's exactly the intuition component that you just mentioned. And I think that's so true. You need to have that as a key ingredient. So are there situations, Christine, that you think relying too heavily on metrics can be detrimental?
I do. Like, if you think about sales, if you have the wrong metric and the metric that you've identified is sales calls, you're going to get one type of behavior. But if your metric is sales calls with conversion, you're going to get a completely different type of behavior, right? One is going for quantity, one is going for quality. And so if we are using metrics, we should understand that human behavior is driven by metrics, right? Everybody wants to hit the metric. So the metric really needs to be well defined, or we will have bad human behavior. Another place, you mentioned this earlier, companies that have so many metrics, they just get demoralizing and bureaucratic, and they waste time. So that's another, besides the fact that if they're poorly written, they'll drive bad behavior. I think too many creates a bureaucratic organization that becomes like stubborn and ineffective.
Right. And I think it goes back to what we were first talking about. It needs to be an evergreen process where you're constantly, just like you're measuring quarterly, you're constantly evaluating, are you measuring the right things, quarterly? Christine, if you were to leave the audience with a closing thought, and then I'm going to ask you for one, power word that we can leave the audience with.
Okay. Oh gosh, a closing thought. Everybody's always asking, what's the low-hanging fruit? Like, what's the simple thing that I can do that will drive profitability, drive growth, drive outcomes? I really deeply believe it is building strength in managers. They've been unattended for the last 5 years. We have, if you look at coming up with a solution that will get more profitability out of the existing group of people that you have, improving your managers is the fastest way to do that. So I would say that's the low-hanging fruit of this modern economy, are managers. And a word, oh gosh. Oh, I know what the word is. The word is progress. Everybody says that they want to see change, but I call BS. Progress is when there's a change, but you measure it, and then you know that it's actually making a difference. So progress is my word.
That is a great word. And actually, I think it's the first time that anybody has ever said that word. I think that's a great, great word. Christine, as always, thank you so much. It was great to have you here today.
I loved being here. It's always an energetic morning to spend some time with you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the AI to Z podcast with Anna Frazzetto. If you found value in today's episode, consider following for more insightful STEM discussions. We'll be back with another deep dive. Until then.